I'm Barbara Balen, retired U.S. Forest Service and board member of the Tuolumne Utilities District. The following presentation details some of the fire challenges Tuolumne County faces and how we can better use our non-potable and potable water resources for pre-disaster planning and post-fire recovery. The elephant in the living room. Max Moritz, a cooperative extension wildfire specialist at UC Santa Barbara's Bren School, has devoted much of his career wrestling with how the nation's most populous state can coexist with fire, an inevitable product of its spectacular wilds. It's not a land management and wildland fire management problem, it's an urban planning problem, he said. It's an issue of where and how we build, and how do you get people out in time. The elephant in the living room situation. Since TUD is obligated to provide water for fire flow during a fire, then it is imperative for Tuolumne County and CAL FIRE to work with TUD to make non-potable water available first in order to protect TUD's treated water for post-fire recovery, health, and safety, and to reduce stress on the treated water system. It's an urban planning and safety problem if non-potable water is not part of the suppression and recovery equation. Elephant in the living room discussion. If neighborhoods exist without fire hydrants, adequate fire flow, emergency exits, or where evacuation may be risky but where there is available non-potable water, then non-potable water must be part of the planning solution and first line of defense. The Wildland-Urban Interface, or WUI. Notice in this slide how fragile and vulnerable the treated water supply tank is. Many people love the rural lifestyle and the idea of being self-sufficient. Unlike urban environments, rural areas may have alternative water sources than fire hydrants. This slide captures the key message of this PowerPoint, the importance of using non-potable water for fire suppression. I'd like to cover 3 points: the Wildland-Urban Interface, what are rural water sources, and why do they matter in the WUI. The Wildland-Urban Interface consists of rural communities, urbanized growth patterns within open land, and a mix of state, private, and federal lands such as the Forest Service, or BLM. A wildland-urban interface, or WUI, is a zone of transition between wildland, unoccupied land, and human development. Communities in the WUI are at risk of catastrophic fire, and their presence disrupts the ecology. Better understanding wildfire behavior and ecology behavior within and around the WUI highlights needs for policy and emergency response planning. In the WUI, the fuel load can be in the form of commercial structures and housing stock. Dead and dry is easier to ignite than green and living. WUI challenges and fire protection are different than urban living areas where fuel loading is concentrated in population centers. Some of the challenges in rural environments are terrain and geography, corridor urban sprawl, vegetation, water supply, and livestock, pets, and rural way of life. Make no mistake, our county's Office of Emergency Services, CAL FIRE, local first responders, volunteers, and fire districts are working on preparedness, education, warning systems, and the like. However, I would like a community discussion on the following: evacuation routes, shelter in place, safer zones, and green zones for livestock and pets, and water resources. We can learn about pre-disaster planning from rural communities who have survived fire and have developed neighborhood plans, which include safer places for people, livestock, and fire crews, as in this example from New South Wales. San Francisco learned this lesson in 1906. Today they have hundreds of underground cisterns mapped, GPSed, and fully charged in every neighborhood. They are marked by big round brick rings in the middle of streets. The newer ones can hold 75,000 gallons each. Columbia citizens hand-dug cisterns in response to a series of fires in the 1850s, which destroyed the town with each fire. According to historic sources, Columbia constructed 7 cisterns ranging in size between 10 to 15,000 gallons. The purpose of the cisterns was to store water for fire protection and other community needs. Construction began in 1860 and was completed in 1863. They were engineered to take ditch water and were used until contemporary times when fire hydrants were installed. Their locations are Broadway, Main, Fulton, State, Jackson, Italian Bar, and another on Broadway. Collectively, these cisterns stored over 70,000 gallons of water, enough to put out a structure fire, which plagued Columbia in the 1850s. They were maintained and used for 100 years. I'd like to discuss water sources, and this is from the Forest Service. Water drafting draws water from streams or impoundments to fill trucks or trailers for the purpose of road construction, maintenance, dust abatement, or fire suppression. The type of water source development varies with location, water availability, drafting equipment, access requirements, and resource objectives. Types of rural water sources: in-channel, off-channel, tanks, dry hydrants, reservoirs, municipal or private water sources, springs, wells, standpipe. Municipal or private water sources. Municipal water is water that has been treated to drinking water standards by a public or private water utility. It is treated and sent through treated pipes throughout the water agency's jurisdiction. It is both a commodity and a service paid for by ratepayers of a particular water agency, public or private. Fire hydrants use treated water. Conveyance and reservoirs. Non-potable, untreated irrigation or raw water flows and is stored throughout Tuolumne County. It is conveyed by gravity from Lyons Reservoir throughout our county in flumes, channels, canals, ditches, and creeks. This conveyance acts as a green fuel break in addition to being a critical water resource. Raw water is stored in open reservoirs like Phoenix, San Diego, Matalo, Westside, and numerous stock ponds. This photo is a good example of where firefighters pumped water right out of the Columbia Canal to fight the surrounding fire. However, these spots need to be formally mapped and integrated into the OES database for anyone to access. Most rural areas growing in size have to address the critical needs of establishing a water source for firefighting efforts, especially if they do not have an adequate municipal water system. Without the comfort of knowing that a pressurized fire hydrant is right around the corner or just ahead, fire departments must develop a plan that will enable them to access reliable water source and transport the water to the fire scene. The entire TUD managed system is essentially 70 miles of fire hydrant. Fire people say the most critical time is the first 5 minutes of a fire. Accessing raw water can make the difference. Fire preparedness. Rural counties need to inventory all available water sources and map all their access points at creeks, stock ponds, canals, ditches, and reservoirs that occur throughout Tuolumne County. They are a critical water source for initial attack where there are no hydrants. Here's an example of a pre-disaster neighborhood plan that delineates 2-lane and 1-lane roads, common areas, and a dry hydrant at a pond. This dry hydrant stands ready to pump out of a non-potable source. Twain Harte Community Services District put one in at Shady Brook Reservoir. Non-potable water is a cheaper alternative to limited, expensive treated water. Using non-potable water for fire suppression saves potable water, and for the health and safety of our community services, fire departments, schools, hospitals, emergency safety zones, infrastructure, shelters, veterinary services, elder care facilities, and post-fire recovery. To date, Paradise still has no drinking water. Paradise showed us we must change the way we prepare. Insurance companies are telling us we must plan smarter. In Paradise alone, FEMA spent $85 million in emergency housing, $370 million in Small Business Administration loans, and $2 billion of federal taxpayer dollars for the first 6 months of cleaning debris. The reactionary model is broken. Clearly, national disasters are outpacing FEMA funding. Optimize pre-disaster planning for optimal post-fire recovery. Pre-disaster planning is our best defense. Incorporate map and GPS all available non-potable water sources. Make maps available to all, including fire insurance companies. Develop agreements with reservoir owners and canal access points on private property. Establish access points and turnarounds, all GPSed. Develop dry hydrants like Twain Harte Community Services District did at Shady Brook. And get it in writing that CAL FIRE agrees to use non-potable water wherever possible. Seek pre-disaster funding and communicate plans with the public. Let's identify vulnerabilities and water resources now. Learn from others, including Paradise, Australia, and New South Wales. Understand the importance of having raw water throughout our county. Reservoirs, conveyance, cisterns, creeks, ponds, and metal tanks in the advent of flume disruption. Understand and utilize our county's unique dual water system. Understand raw water is cheaper than treated water. Understand TUD's limited and vulnerable treated water supply. In the end, our society will be defined not by what we have created, but by what we refuse to destroy. Here's the bottom line. Our community will never be the same after a fire, and the smart use of our water sources and pre-disaster preparedness can make all the difference. Thank you.